Welcome to this video, which is an advanced version of Method 1. Once you've been using Method 1, the standard version, for a while, then hopefully you'll have built up expertise and know the sorts of matches you should be picking and know that you can make consistent profits. Once you're in that position, then I want to show you this advanced method, which will hopefully make more money for you, a higher profit. But as with all things, if there is more reward, then there is slightly more risk. So that's why I don't start you off with this advanced method in the first place. So what is this method and how has it come about? What I'll show you are some screenshots of particular matches. Let me find the first one, because if you've been observant during a normal match, this is a standard method one where we've got the under 3.5 goals market bet, and we've then got the bets on the 1-3, 3-1 and 2-2 correct scores. Now what you will have noticed is that after a while, if there's no goal scoring activity, then the cash out on the under 3.5 goals market, for example here it's £3, unfortunately I've got the cursor right over the final figure, but it's £3.40, looks like 42. But of course, because we've got the bets on the correct score market, we would have the cash out is either going to, well, we're either going to have to allow for a £5.38 loss, or the cash out might be a significant percentage of the £3.42. And I'm sure some of you have asked yourselves, well, wouldn't it be nice if there was no liability on the correct score market, i.e. there were no correct scores chosen? We were just dealing with the under 3.5 goals market. Obviously this doesn't make it a Dutching technique. It is then becoming more of a sort of straight bet technique, but obviously we are using the selection criteria rules we've got for the standard method 1 technique, helping us pick suitable matches. So this is a situation where if we didn't have the correct scores, then we could have cashed out at this point for £3.42, £3.43 profit. Okay, let me show you another one. Here it's even more pronounced. Once again, this is a standard method 1 bet, and so we've got the under 3.5 goals bet there. We've got the 1-3, 3-1, 2-2 bets placed. Once again, because I'm obviously using the same stakes by the looks of it, then there's a £5.38 liability if any of these scores crop up. But at the moment we could cash out for £8. Now, alright, £8 minus potential £5.38 loss would leave us with £2.62, I think. So it would be a profit, but once again you could say, well, wouldn't it be nice if there was no correct score bets been placed initially and we'd waited and we'd cashed out now. Okay, let me show you just one more, which is going to be very similar. Here we see once again it's the same sort of situation. This time the cash out on the under 3.5 goals market would be £8.52. So the aim of the advanced method is to say, well, let's actually cut down the number of correct scores that we're going to cover, and we are just going to cover the correct scores that are covered just by betting on under 3.5 goals. Okay, so we do not place the bets on the correct score markets. Now, to be certain that we are choosing matches that are not going to cause a problem by having scores that are outside the 3.5 goals maximum limit, then the rules for this method, the advanced method, are slightly tighter than they were for the normal standard method one. So in this instance we're looking at home and away match odds should be less than 1.25 apart. Under 2.5 goals odds must be less than 1.75, so that's tighter than it was in the standard method, and ideally below 1.65. What we are looking for are matches that are highly rated to be less than 2.5 goals. That then means with our under 3.5 goals bet, we should be safely able to win. Now, because with this method part of the technique is being able to cash out in play, then there must be sufficient liquidity in the under 3.5 goals market, and ideally we want more than £1,000. If it's a lot more than 1,000, then that's even better. So try to use this technique always on main leagues where there is a lot of liquidity in the market. The other parameters, these are a little bit laxer, as you'll see, in terms of being applied, but basically we should look for matches where the previous few matches with the home team playing at home, they should have scored less than 2 goals per match. And the away team, when scoring away, should also be less than 2 goals per match. The lower the better. Once again, this is just confirming that we are looking for matches that have got as least goals in being scored as possible. And any previous head-to-head encounters that are fairly recent should have less than 3 goals in total per match. Okay, now I've already selected a match for this demonstration, and let me go to Betfair. So you make your match selection on exactly the same way as you normally would. Today is Saturday the 17th of October, and looking down the list here you'll see that we've got Sheffield Wednesday versus Hull at 12:30. I'm about an hour and a quarter before kick-off that I'm recording this video, and you'll see that the home odds are 2.88, away odds 2.86. They're certainly within the 1.25 maximum criteria. I mean, you couldn't get them much closer than that. So if I go to the page with the match on, then here you'll see that the under 2.5 goals odds are 1.67, so that's nearly below the 1.65 ideal figure, certainly below the 1.75 figure that I've just mentioned on the slide. Let me just go back to that. So there we are. Under 2.5 goals odds must be less than 1.75 and ideally below 1.65. We're at 1.67, so I'm happy with that. Sufficient liquidity, 1k on the 3.5 goals market. That is now 2,268, so that, once again, lots of nice liquidity. There's a tight link between the back and lay odds, so there isn't a big gap at all anywhere. So I'm happy with that. The only other parameters to look at are the previous matches. So we go to the head-to-head figure, we click on the home for the home team, away for the away team. Now here we've got Sheffield Wednesday, previous few matches, it's been 3-3, 1-1, 1-4. That is basically above 2, which does not make it ideal. Hull away, it's 1-2-0, 1-1-2, so that is more like the sort of figures I would be hoping to see for the home team. Now, looking at the past encounters, unfortunately they're not recent, they're 2012, 2013, and you can't really read an awful lot into these figures. I mean, we've got 0-0, 0-1, they're fine. 1-3, obviously not fine. But then again, of course, that's 2013, so we can't really read anything into that figure. So I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here by going for this match. The fact that the odds do suggest it is going to be a low scoring game is obviously in our favour. Once again, this is the sort of experience you'll gain over time, and you'll appreciate those matches where you can perhaps take a risk, where it doesn't fully meet the rules that I've given. But I think when you're first starting out using this advanced method, try and stick to the rules as closely as possible, and get some good successful bets under your belt. I mean, if we look at the correct score, I know we're not going to use the correct score odds here, but you'll see that the market is expecting that 1-1 is going to be the likeliest outcome. Next most popular score is 1-0 or 0-1. Even 0-0 is quite low odds. Anything higher is going up. So once again, that's a bit of reassurance that this is not a match that is going to give us any trouble. So I'm going to go in on this match, and I'm going to, because it's a nice simple bet, we're going to bet. Oh, I've just lost the 1.26 odds. How annoying. It's just a straight back bet under 3.5 goals. So I'll open that up. I'm going to bet £25. Seems to be a standard sort of stake I'm using these days. Place the bet. There we are, we've got that matched. Profit is £6.25 before Betfair commission. Works out at £5.94. Now, I'll be pausing the video and coming back as the match progresses. Not certain if I actually had the video box low enough down for you to see the 3.5 goals figure before, but there it is now. I've done it so that you can see it. Now, the only other thing to mention is how we actually play these matches, because there are a couple of different ways of doing it. One is that we could risk just placing the bet and leaving it to the end of the match. That is not the technique that I use. I like to be absolutely guaranteed of getting a profit with just about every match. So the aim is to try to make a profit on every match by cashing out before the match ends. So it's very unlikely that I would stay right to the end of the match. Now, that is based on experience. I've had too many matches where it's been 0-0 up until maybe the 70th minute, and then all of a sudden the two teams suddenly seem to spring into life, and it's goal, 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 and you rapidly find yourself facing a loss or having to cash out a bit quickly for as small a loss as possible. So my first technique that I recommend is that you cash out at the 20 to 25 minutes, provided the score has stayed 0-0. If a goal has been scored, then just wait. You won't be able to cash out for a profit at that stage, but if you wait until half time, then you could well find that, certainly I've found it, that you can cash out for a small profit then. And that's the time when I would cash out. Now, if a second goal is scored before you've cashed out, then you've got to consider exiting with as small a loss as possible. And this is where a bit of this is where experience really does come in, because it depends how the goals are being scored. If there's, say, a big gap between the first goal and the second goal, then you can consider waiting and hoping, obviously, that there isn't a third goal scored quite quickly, because the longer you wait, the more the odds will change, and you'll find that the loss from cashing out will decrease. And I've certainly had the situation where I've had a potential loss of, let's say, well, most of my stake, let's say £20, and by waiting I've been able to cash out for maybe £3, and for a £3 loss, which of course I can make back very quickly with just one or two bets. So I'm quite happy to take that sort of strategy. The other thing that you can consider doing, I don't do this, but it is something you could do, is if the score is 0-0 at half time, and then of course you could argue, well, you've got a complete half to get 4 goals scored, is that likely? But what you could do is you could then consider going back to the method 1 technique, which is where you would then add the 2-2, 1-3 and 3-1 correct score bets. Now that's a sensible thing to do, because if the score is 0-0 at half time, the correct score odds for 2-2, 1-3 and 3-1 will have increased since the match started. So that means if you were doing this as a standard method 1, then you'd have certain stakes according to the pre-kick-off odds for 2-2, 1-3, 3-1. Because the odds have increased at the half time point, then those stakes will be a lot less using this advanced method technique. So your profit would be greater, and obviously you're still covered for all of the under 3.5 scores and 2-2, 1-3, 3-1. So you're covered for some four goal match scores. So using these techniques, you're going to get a typical return on investment of between 8 and 15%, which you'll find is higher than it is for the normal method. So that's covered the how the advanced technique works. As I say, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to come back to this. Whoops, here we go. I'm going to come back to this Sheffield Wednesday Hull match, and we'll see how it progresses over time, and hopefully I'll be able to cash out with the score still being 0-0 at about 20 minutes and make a nice profit. So I'll come back very shortly. Welcome back. Here we are 10 minutes into the match. As you can see, the score is very nicely still 0-0, and if I was to cash out now from the over under 3.5 goals market, as you can see, I can cash out now for about £1.19, which, if we look at that as a percentage of the £25 stake, just using my calculator now, so we could cash out for, that's just 4.8% return, so we're almost 5% ROI after 10 minutes. So as you can see, it all drifts very, very nicely. Other things I'll point out: note the amount of money now matched on the over under 3.5 goals market. It's 25,000. So there's certainly a lot of liquidity in this match. In fact, there's more money matched on the over under 3.5 than there is on the correct score market, which is showing us just over 20,000, which is interesting that it's that way round. I would have expected it to be maybe the other way round. Unfortunately, we didn't take note of what the odds were for 2-2, 1-3, 3-1 before the match kicked off, but in fact, that should be shown on an earlier part of this video, so you can go back, check that. But you should see that 1-3 has drifted out, 2-2 has drifted out, and 3-1 has drifted out. This is the natural way that the odds will drift as a match goes on. The correct score odds still show 1-1 as being the most likely outcome, but we are now not far behind with 0-0 and 0-1. So once again, it's still confirmation that this is expected to be a low-scoring match. People do make an assessment after a match has been playing for a few minutes as to how aggressively the teams are playing and whether or not there's a likelihood a goal is going to be scored. And this is always reflected in the odds drift. As you can see, since I've been speaking, we could now cash out for £1 or £1.61. There is that £1.61. So that means we've now already gone up to a 6.4% ROI. We were 5% just a couple of minutes ago. So it's all ticking along very nicely. The full ROI, if we were to stay to the end of the match, would be 26%, 25%, because we got odds of 1.25. So this is where, everything is looking very nice, so I'm certainly quite happy to continue monitoring this match as time goes on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this running. Wouldn't normally do that in an example match, but I do want you to see how the drift actually progresses with time. I will probably be looking to cash out at between the 20 to 25 minute mark. What I ideally like to see is I would like to get between 40 and 50% of the profit that I would make if I went to the end of the match and it was successful. Get that back. So £5.94. I'm looking for roughly £3. If we can hit a £3 cash out, then I would certainly take it, rather than risk there being a goal glut later on in the match. There's nothing worse than hanging on a bit too long and then seeing what was a guaranteed profit disappearing, because you've been a little bit too greedy. I'd rather every match was like this, that it was 0-0 up until about 20-25 minutes. Don't care what they do after that, but we would hope to, as I say, the aim of this technique is to try and make a profit from every match that we've selected, using the selection criteria. So I'll actually mute the microphone now, so I'll just leave this running and I'll be back to speak to you in a few minutes' time, or if anything else happens. Okay, well, it's now 20 minutes. I can cash out for £2.62, £2.64. That's more than a 10% return on investment, so I'm going to do that now. I'm not going to risk staying in too long. And there we are, cash out successful. So whatever happens, I've now made a profit. Let's say if it's £2.62, then if we divide that by 25, that's a return on investment of about 10.5%, which is not bad for 20 minutes work, and is a nice easy way of making money. So I'll pause the video again. I will come back at the end of the match and just show you how the match went. We'll see if it would have been advisable to have stayed in and made more profit, but I'm happy with that level of profit. If I can do that every time and I'm not risking anything, then that's what I like. You'll notice on the correct score market that the people who are backing 0-0 are expecting that to be the most likely score. We got now the odds are down at 5.5. The next likely score is 0-1 or 1-0, and then 1-1. Once again, if you check the 2-2, that score's gone up to odds have gone up to 34. I think they were 25 when I last mentioned it. I can't remember. 1-3 is now odds of 50. 3-1 is now odds of 60. Those have definitely gone up. So that, as I say, that is a technique that you can use. The adding the extra correct scores on, so you're covering more you're dutching more scores, as you would do in the normal method one. But it's not something that I do. I just want to show you how the match ended. I did try to record as a follow-on from the previous recording, but something obviously went wrong, so I'm having to do this quite a while later. But as you can see here, we've got from the livescore.com website, the final score was 1-1, and it was 1-0 at half time. And here you can actually see when the goals were scored. Sheffield Wednesday scored at 29 minutes, so we cashed out at, I think it was about the 22 minute mark. So if we'd stayed in a bit longer, then there would have been a goal which would have set the cash out figure back down, probably down into a loss level. And even by half time, although the loss would have been reduced on the cash out, it probably wouldn't have turned into a profit. But even if it had, it would have been a smaller profit than the profit we cashed out with when we did. There was then an equalising goal by Hull at 51 minutes. Now, once again, that would have pushed the cash out figure back into negative territory. It's also a slightly awkward figure. With 1-1, I would be getting a little bit worried that I only have a 1-goal cushion before the overall bet is going to turn into a loser. So I would be sort of monitoring the match to see how the match will progress, because we've got 40 minutes to go until the final whistle, and that is a lot of time, certainly enough time for a third goal to be scored. If a third goal was scored, then it's sort of biting the fingernails time, hoping that a further goal isn't scored. And that is, of course, another one of the reasons why I like to cash out early whilst the score is still 0-0. As it so happens in this match, then there were no further goals, so if we had stayed into the very end, then we would have earned the full profit from that match. So that's given you, I think, a feel for how this method works. Once, as I say, don't try this until you've really grasped the normal method 1 technique, and if you're consistently making profits there and those matches would have been successful using this advanced technique, then switch to the advanced technique and try to make money on every match and get a higher return on investment than you have been making on the standard method 1 technique. So that's the end of this video. I'll probably try to put up some additional videos showing example matches where things don't go quite as planned, so you can see how I would try to get out of those situations without losing my whole stake. And so I thank you for watching and look forward to speaking to you again in another video shortly.